The conference room lights buzzed softly above us as Victoria clicked through the presentation slides. Each one showed my work, my logo designs, my data analysis, my carefully researched projections. But her voice filled the room, confident and smooth, as if every word had come from her own mind. The VP of Operations nodded along, clearly impressed. Around the table, senior managers leaned forward in their chairs, studying the charts I'd spent 6 months perfecting. Victoria gestured at the screen with practiced ease, explaining revenue projections and market strategies. My strategies, my research, my late nights and early mornings compressed into 20 slides that no longer had my name on them. The applause started before I could process what was happening. It sounded distant, like I was hearing it from underwater. My hands trembled beneath the table where no one could see them. I gripped my pen hard enough that my knuckles turned white. Victoria turned slightly, her eyes finding mine across the room. She smiled, not a warm smile, but something sharp and knowing. Her lips moved silently. "You'll thank me later." That's when I understood something dark about the corporate world. Hard work doesn't always win, but strategy does. The meeting ended with more congratulations for Victoria. People gathered around her, shaking her hand and praising the innovative approach. "Brilliant work," the VP said, clapping her shoulder. "This could change our entire client acquisition model." I stood up on legs that felt disconnected from my body. My mouth opened and words tried to form. "That was my..." Victoria was beside me instantly, her hand on my arm, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "Careful, Emma. It's called teamwork. You're part of my team, remember?" Her perfume was overwhelming up close, sharp and expensive. It made my stomach turn. She squeezed my arm once, just hard enough to make her point clear, then walked away toward the VP. I watched her laugh at something he said, watched her toss her hair back in that way she did when she wanted attention. Everyone else filed out of the conference room, still talking about the presentation. About her presentation. I gathered my notebook slowly, my hands still shaking. Inside were my original notes, my sketches, my calculations, all the proof that this idea had come from me. That night, I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could drive home. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows across the concrete pillars. My phone sat in my lap, open to my email drafts. Every version of the proposal was there, time-stamped and saved. Emails from Victoria with her comments and suggestions. But the original work, all of it, had my name on the file properties. The metadata would show I'd created everything. I almost forwarded it all to HR right then. My finger hovered over the send button while my heart hammered in my chest. But then I remembered something. HR reported directly to Victoria now. She'd been promoted to director last month, and part of her new role gave her oversight of human resources for our division. Sending evidence to them would be like handing it directly to her. I closed the email and started my car. My name is Emma Dalton, and this is how the woman who stole my promotion ended up reporting to me. But that night, sitting in my car with proof I couldn't use, I had no idea how I'd make that happen. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. I was the quiet analyst in the corner cubicle at Braverton Media, the one who kept her head down and did solid work. I didn't go to happy hours or play office politics. I just focused on being good at my job. Victoria had been my manager for a year by then. She was everything I wasn't, charismatic, always perfectly dressed, the type of person who knew everyone's name and remembered their birthdays. She called people darling and sweetheart in a way that somehow didn't sound fake. Everyone liked her. I liked her too at first. She seemed genuinely interested in developing her team. When she asked me to stay late one evening to discuss a new project, I'd been flattered. "I have an idea," she'd said, leaning against my cubicle wall. "A complete overhaul of how we approach client retention. But I need someone with your analytical skills to make it work." She'd smiled then, warm and encouraging. "What do you say? Want to collaborate on something that could really put us on the map?" Of course, I'd said yes. I'd been waiting for an opportunity like that. The project consumed me for months. I built financial models, analyzed competitor strategies, created mock-ups of new client dashboards. Victoria and I met in her office every Tuesday and Thursday evening. She'd review my work with a red pen, making suggestions and asking questions. "This is brilliant, Emma," she'd say, circling a particularly strong section. "You have such a sharp mind for this. We're going to make sure everyone knows what you're capable of." I believed her. I trusted that we meant partnership, that my hard work would be recognized. She talked about presenting the proposal together, about how it could be a stepping stone for both our careers. Sometimes she'd order dinner for us while we worked, and we'd talk about our lives outside the office. She told me about her divorce, her difficult relationship with her mother. I told her about my student loans, my tiny apartment, my dreams of moving up in the company. Those evenings felt like mentorship, like friendship even. I couldn't see what was really happening. I couldn't see that she was learning exactly how to take everything I'd built and claim it as her own. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning. A company-wide email with the subject line, "Congratulations to Victoria Hale." I opened it at my desk, expecting maybe she'd landed a big client or won some industry award. Instead, I read, "We're proud to announce Victoria Hale as our new Director of Strategy, effective immediately." Victoria has demonstrated exceptional vision and leadership, most recently with her innovative client retention proposal that promises to transform our business model. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I read it again, then a third time. My client retention proposal. The one I'd spent 6 months developing. The one with my research, my models, my analysis. Now it was hers, just hers. At lunch, Victoria gathered the whole team in the conference room. She'd brought champagne and fancy pastries from the bakery downtown. She raised her glass and smiled at all of us. "I couldn't have done this without my incredible team," she said, her eyes sweeping across the room. When they landed on me, they held steady for just a moment. "Every person here contributed to my success, and I won't forget that." Everyone clapped and congratulated her. I lifted my glass and smiled. The champagne tasted like acid in my throat. Everything changed after her promotion. Suddenly, the interesting projects went to other people. My assignments became smaller, more administrative. Data entry, formatting reports, updating spreadsheets. When I asked Victoria about taking on more strategic work, she smiled that same warm smile and said, "Let's focus on building your foundational skills first. You're not quite ready for leadership responsibilities yet." One afternoon, I walked into her office to drop off a report she'd requested. She was on a phone call and waved me in distractedly. I set the papers on her desk and turned to leave, but something on her computer screen caught my eye. My performance review. It was open in a document, and I could see the words clearly. "Emma shows dedication but lacks initiative, struggles to communicate complex ideas clearly, not ready for advancement at this time." I stood there, frozen, staring at those words, my ideas, my communication, everything I'd poured into that proposal that was now launching her career. She ended her phone call and looked up, following my gaze to the screen. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Then she smiled and closed the laptop. "Was there something else you needed?" I walked straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. The tears came hot and angry, streaming down my face until my mascara left black streaks on my collar. I cried until my chest hurt and my throat was raw. Then I washed my face, reapplied my makeup with shaking hands, and went back to my desk. But something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and deep. But underneath it, something harder was forming. That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and started going through every file, every email, every document related to the project. I saved copies of everything to my personal drive. File creation dates, edit histories, email threads showing the evolution of ideas, my ideas with her comments and suggestions layered on top. I organized it all into folders with clear labels and timestamps. Then I started watching Victoria more carefully, how she operated in meetings, who she flattered and who she dismissed, how she positioned herself to take credit while deflecting blame. I realized something important. She wasn't actually brilliant. She was manipulative. And manipulation only works until someone smarter starts paying attention. The next few months, I became exactly what she wanted me to be. Quiet, obedient, predictable. I said yes, Victoria, and completed every task flawlessly. I stopped pushing for recognition or advancement. I became invisible again. But invisibility has advantages. While Victoria was busy performing for executives and building her reputation, I was building something else: relationships. I started having coffee with people from other departments. IT specialists who understood file systems and metadata. Finance analysts who knew how budget. Approvals really worked. Operations managers who saw how projects actually got implemented. Not to gossip about Victoria, just to learn. to understand how the company really functioned beneath the surface of org charts and official processes. I volunteered to help with cross-departmental projects, the unglamorous work nobody wanted. I made myself useful to people who had nothing to do with my immediate team. Slowly, quietly, I built a network of people who knew my actual capabilities. People who'd seen my work firsthand, without Victoria's name attached to it. If she'd built an empire of illusion, I was building one of evidence and genuine relationships. And I was patient. Because I'd learned something important. Rushing gets you noticed. Patience gets you results. The rumor started circulating on a Wednesday afternoon. Our CEO, the man who'd run Braverton Media for 15 years, was retiring. The board was bringing in someone from outside the company, someone with a reputation for shaking things up. I was in the break room when I heard two executives discussing it in low voices. "He's young," one said. "Made his name turning around struggling companies. He's big on transparency and authenticity." The other laughed. "That'll be interesting. This place runs on politics and performance." Victoria called an emergency team meeting that afternoon. She stood at the head of the conference room, her usual confidence slightly strained. "As you've all heard, we're going through a transition period," she said. "These situations can be unpredictable. My advice, stay close to your immediate supervisors. Show loyalty. That's what new leadership notices." She looked directly at me when she said it. I nodded and smiled. But inside, something was stirring. A new CEO meant new perspectives. New evaluations. A chance for things to shift. I just had to be ready when the opportunity came. 2 weeks later, the company announced a comprehensive internal audit. Every department would undergo review, performance metrics, project ownership, resource allocation. The email emphasized that documentation would be key. "Please ensure all project files are properly organized and attributed," it read. Victoria's next team meeting had a different tone. Her voice was sharper, her movements more agitated. "I need everyone to review their files," she said. "Make sure everything is labeled under department folders, not personal ones. We want to present a unified front." I raised my hand. "What about projects where individuals did the primary work? Should those still be labeled under the department?" Her eyes fixed on me, and for a moment I saw something cold in them. "Everything we do is collaborative, Emma. Team efforts, not individual glory. Make sure your files reflect that." I nodded. "Of course." But that night, I backed up everything again. Every file, every email, every piece of evidence showing my work. I saved it all to an external drive and a secure cloud account. Because I understood what she was really asking me to do, erase my name from my own work. And I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. The new CEO started 3 weeks later. His name was Michael Graves, and he was younger than anyone expected, mid-40s, with a reputation for valuing substance over style. His first company-wide email was short and direct. "I believe in authentic leadership. In the coming weeks, I'll be meeting with people at all levels to understand how we really work, not just how we say we work. If you have insights or concerns, my door is open." Victoria held another team meeting. This time, she was all smiles again. "This is our chance to show what we're capable of," she said brightly. "I'll be organizing innovation workshops, strategy sessions. We need to demonstrate that we're forward-thinking." She started holding creative lunches where she'd gather the team to brainstorm ideas. Everything we suggested, she'd write down in her leather notebook, nodding enthusiastically. But I noticed something. Those ideas started appearing in her reports to upper management, always phrased slightly differently but essentially the same. She was still mining her team for content to make herself look good. The difference now was that I was documenting it. Every suggestion, every meeting note, every follow-up email. I was building a timeline of how she operated, and I was waiting to see what this new CEO would notice. The email arrived on a Thursday morning. Invitation, strategy roundtable with CEO Michael Graves. Selected participants from various departments will present ideas for company growth and improvement. I stared at my name on the attendee list. I was the only person from my team invited. Not Victoria, not any of the other managers, just me. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Got invited to that round table, probably a clerical error. They meant to send it to me." I texted back, "The invitation has my name specifically. Should I decline?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "No, go. It's a good opportunity for you to observe how these meetings work." But when I looked up from my phone, I could see her through the glass wall of her office. She was staring at her computer screen and her face was pale. That afternoon, she called me into her office. "If you go to this round table," she said carefully, "remember that you represent the whole team. Anything you present should be framed as our collective work." "Understood," I nodded. "Of course, team effort." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good, I knew I could count on you." I didn't sleep well for the next 2 nights. I revised a presentation I'd been working on privately, something I'd developed on my own time using publicly available data and my own analysis. Nothing she could claim ownership of. I called it integrity-driven growth, building client relationships through authentic value. The title was deliberate. Integrity, authenticity. The words Michael Graves had used in his first email, but more than that, they represented what I believed in, what I'd been trying to build before Victoria had stolen my voice. I printed copies of my original proposal too, not to wave around or make accusations, just to have if it became relevant. The metadata on those files told a story. My story. When the morning of the round table arrived, I dressed carefully, professional but not flashy. I wanted to look capable, not like I was trying too hard. Victoria caught me at the elevator. "Remember," she said quietly, "think before you speak. These meetings can make or break careers." I met her eyes. "I will, thank you for the advice." The elevator doors closed between us, and I watched her face disappear. For the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. The conference room was bigger than I'd expected, with windows overlooking the city skyline. Senior executives lined both sides of the long table. Michael Graves sat at the head, younger and more casual than our previous CEO. He wore a button-down shirt with no tie, and he was taking notes by hand in a simple notebook. When my turn came to present, I stood and introduced myself. "Emma Dalton, strategic analyst. I want to talk about building client relationships through authentic value rather than just aggressive acquisition tactics." I clicked through my slides, keeping my voice steady even though my hands wanted to shake. I talked about long-term relationship building, about transparency and pricing, about delivering real value rather than just making promises. Halfway through, Michael held up his hand. I stopped, my heart suddenly pounding. Had I said something wrong? He frowned slightly, studying his notes. "Wait, Dalton, that name sounds familiar." He flipped back several pages. "I reviewed a proposal when I first joined, similar concept, but I thought—" He looked up, his eyes scanning the room until they found Victoria in the back corner. "I thought that came from Victoria Hale." Silence fell across the conference room. Every face turned toward us. Victoria smiled brightly. "Emma was part of that project team, yes." Michael's frown deepened. "Part of the team. The document I reviewed listed a single author." My pulse thundered in my ears. This was the moment. I could stay quiet, let it pass, keep being invisible, or I could speak the truth. I took a breath and said carefully, "The original proposal did have a single author, me. The drafts are still in the company system with creation dates and edit histories." The room stayed silent. Victoria's smile hardened into something brittle. "Emma's confused," she said, a slight laugh in her voice. "She provided excellent analytical support, but the strategic vision was mine." I reached into my folder and pulled out a printed document. "This is the original project brief, created 8 months ago. It includes authorship metadata showing I generated all primary content." I slid it across the table toward Michael. "I have the complete file history if you'd like to review it." Victoria stood up from her chair in the back. "This is inappropriate. Emma clearly doesn't understand how collaborative work functions in a professional environment." But Michael was studying the document I'd given him. His expression was unreadable. Finally, he looked up. "I think we should discuss this privately. Victoria, Emma, please stay after this meeting concludes. Everyone else, thank you for your time." The other executives filed out quietly, exchanging glances. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked curious. I stayed in my seat, my hands folded in my lap to hide their shaking. Victoria remained standing in the back, her face pale but her spine straight. When the door closed behind the last person, Michael turned to face us both. "I want to understand exactly what happened here." The conversation that followed was careful and controlled. Victoria tried to frame everything as a misunderstanding, as my inexperience with corporate collaboration. I didn't argue or accuse. Just provided facts, file dates, email threads, the progression of ideas showing my original concepts and her later suggestions. Michael listened without interrupting. He took notes. He asked specific questions about timing and process. After 30 minutes, he said, Thank you both. I'll need to review this with HR and legal. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. Victoria left first, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. I gathered my materials slowly, giving her time to get ahead. When I finally stood, Michael was still at the table, reviewing documents. "Ms. Dalton," he said without looking up. "Yes. Integrity is either everything or it's nothing. There's no middle ground." I wasn't sure if that was a statement or a test. "I agree," I said quietly. He nodded once, still not looking at me. "We'll talk tomorrow." I left the building and drove home in a daze. I had no idea if I'd done the right thing or just destroyed my career. That night my phone rang. It was Victoria. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted, "We need to talk. This can still be fixed." I turned off my phone and tried to sleep. The next morning, HR called me before I'd even finished my coffee. "Ms. Dalton, please come to conference room C at 9 o'clock. The room was smaller than yesterday's, with no windows. Two HR representatives sat across from me, along with the company's legal counsel. They asked me to explain the project timeline in detail, to provide all documentation I had. I gave them everything. The original files, the emails, the progression of work. I explained how I'd trusted Victoria's guidance, how I'd believed we were collaborating until I realized my name had been removed from everything. They asked if I'd reported this earlier. I explained that Victoria had oversight of HR, that I hadn't known who to trust. They took notes and assured me this would be investigated thoroughly. When I left that meeting, I felt hollowed out, exposed. The rest of the day passed in a blur. People at work looked at me differently, some with sympathy, others with something that might have been respect. Victoria didn't come into the office. Her door stayed closed and locked. At 5 o'clock, I saw her leave through the lobby. Her face was blank, her movements stiff. She didn't look at anyone. She walked out to the parking garage, and that was the last time I saw her that week. On Friday afternoon, Michael Graves' assistant called. "Mr. Graves would like to see you in his office at 4 o'clock. I arrived exactly on time. His office was surprisingly simple, no fancy furniture or ego wall of achievements. Just a desk, some chairs, and bookshelves filled with actual books, not decorative ones. He gestured for me to sit. "Ms. Dalton, I've reviewed everything. The documentation, the timeline, the witness statements from your colleagues in other departments." He paused. What Victoria did was wrong. More than wrong, it was a fundamental violation of the principles this company should stand for. I waited, not sure what to say. He continued, "I value quiet strength, people who do excellent work without needing constant recognition. But I also value people who stand up when it matters, even when it's difficult." He opened a drawer and pulled out a formal document. "I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Strategy. Victoria has been reassigned to a non-supervisory role in another division. If she chooses to stay with the company, she'll be working under very different conditions." My breath caught. "Director? You've demonstrated the strategic thinking and integrity I want in leadership. Your work speaks for itself when it's allowed to speak." He slid the document across his desk. "This is the formal offer. Take time to review it if you need to." I scanned the document with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The title, the salary, the responsibilities, it was everything I'd been working toward. Everything Victoria had stolen and then blocked me from reaching. "I accept," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He smiled for the first time. "Good. We'll make the announcement Monday. Take the weekend to prepare. This will create some waves." That was an understatement. When I got home, I sat in my apartment and stared at the offer letter for hours. Part of me kept waiting for someone to call and say it was a mistake. But my phone stayed quiet except for a few texts from colleagues who'd heard rumors. On Monday morning, the company-wide email went out. "We are pleased to announce Emma Dalton as Director of Strategy, effective immediately." Emma brings deep analytical expertise and a demonstrated commitment to authentic, ethical leadership. My phone exploded with messages. Congratulations from people I'd helped over the past months. Curious questions from people who'd heard about the confrontation. And silence from Victoria. That afternoon, someone left a small bouquet of flowers on my new desk. No card, just a handwritten note. "Truth takes time, but it always surfaces." I never found out who left it. Victoria returned to the office 2 weeks later. She'd been given a transition role, helping document processes, training new staff, corporate speak for stripping away her power. She had to report to me now. On her first day back, she appeared in my doorway holding a notebook like armor. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Emma," she said quietly. Do you have time to discuss my transition responsibilities? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Of course, please sit down. She sat on the edge of the seat, her posture stiff. Congratulations on the promotion. The words sounded like they'd been pulled out of her. Thank you, I said simply. We spent 30 minutes going over her new role. Every time I gave her an assignment or explained a process, I could see her jaw tighten. This woman who'd stood so confidently presenting my work now sat across from me, diminished and defensive. When we finished, she stood to leave. At the door, she paused. Did you plan this? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I met her eyes. No, Victoria, you did when you decided to take credit for work you didn't do. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I gave you opportunities, I mentored you. You stole from me, I said quietly. There's a difference. She left without responding. The power shift was strange and uncomfortable. In meetings, Victoria had to defer to me in front of people who used to answer to her. Her confident voice had become quiet and uncertain. When she had ideas, and to be fair, she occasionally did, she presented them tentatively, waiting for my approval. One afternoon, she made a genuine suggestion about streamlining our reporting process. It was actually good. That's an excellent idea, I told her in front of the team. Let's implement that. She looked surprised, almost suspicious. Like she was waiting for me too. Take it and claim it as my own, but I didn't. When I presented the new process to upper management, I credited her clearly. Victoria identified this efficiency improvement. After the meeting, she caught me in the hallway. Why did you do that? Give you credit because it was your idea. I kept walking, but I heard her voice behind me. I never did that for you. I know, I said without turning around. A month into her transition role, Victoria submitted her resignation. The email was brief. After careful consideration, I've decided to pursue new opportunities outside Braverton Media. Thank you for the experience. She cleared out her desk on a Friday afternoon when most people had already left. I watched from my office as she packed boxes with her personal items. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't look back as she walked to the elevator. 2 months after Victoria left, I led my first major company-wide presentation. It was in the same conference room where she'd stolen my work, where I'd sat with shaking hands and watched her claim my ideas as her own. But now I stood at the front, presenting a new strategic initiative I'd developed with my team. Michael Graves introduced me personally. Emma represents what this company stands for: integrity, authentic innovation, and the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult. The applause that followed was real this time, not for stolen work, but for something I'd actually created. As I presented, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. I looked different. Not harder exactly, but stronger, more certain of my place in the room. After the presentation, several people came up to congratulate me. One of them was an analyst who'd been on Victoria's team. I knew that original proposal was yours, she said quietly. I saw your files before she presented it. But I was too scared to say anything. I understand, I told her. Speaking up isn't easy, she nodded. But you did it, that matters. That evening, I stayed late in my office looking out at the city lights, my city now, my career, my voice finally heard. 6 months into my new role, I was invited to speak at an industry conference about ethical leadership. I almost declined. Public speaking still made me nervous, but Michael encouraged me. Your story matters. People need to hear it, so I went. I stood on that stage and talked about integrity, about the difference between collaboration and theft, about the importance of documentation and speaking truth even when it costs you something. I didn't name Victoria. I didn't need to. The story itself was powerful enough. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25. That happened to me, she said, tears in her eyes. My manager took my work. I have proof, but I'm afraid to say anything. I took her email address and promised to call her. Later that week, I spent an hour on the phone with her, walking through exactly what documentation she needed, what steps she should take, helping her find her voice the way I'd found mine. That became something I did regularly. Young professionals would reach out, asking for advice. I made time for them because I remembered what it felt like to be voiceless and afraid. And slowly, I built something bigger than just my own career. I built a reputation for integrity that opened doors I'd never expected. A year after becoming director, I ran into Victoria at an industry event. She looked different, older somehow, though it had only been months. She was working for a smaller firm now in a non-leadership role. When our eyes met across the room, she hesitated. Then she walked over. Emma, she said. Hi, Victoria, how are you? I'm okay, adjusting. She glanced around at the event, at all the people who used to know her as a director. I wanted to say something. I never apologized. For what I did to you, I waited. I told myself it was just how business worked, that everyone did it, that you'd understand eventually. She paused. But it wasn't right. I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance, but I only saw regret. Thank you for saying that, I said. It means something. Are you happy in your career? I thought about my team, my projects, the young professionals I mentored. About walking into meetings without fear, about my name on my own work. Yes, I said simply. I am, she nodded slowly. Good, that's good. We parted ways after that. I never saw her again. But sometimes I think about what she taught me, even if she didn't mean to. She taught me that revenge isn't the same as justice. That speaking truth is powerful even when it's terrifying. That quiet strength beats loud performance every time. And most importantly, she taught me that some people build their success by stealing others' voices. But if you stay steady and patient long enough, eventually, the truth speaks louder than any lie. My name is Emma Dalton, and this is my voice.